Hello, everyone. As Don said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're coming to us from Europe, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Set. Okay. So welcome. I'm very excited to be teaching this course. I'm not entirely sure of the level that everybody is at. So because I hope this will be a first in a series of them, I'm going to start at the beginning and work our way up. If you're an advanced user, stick around. I promise you will learn something by the end of it. And if you're a beginner user, I will crawl, walk, and run for the next 90 minutes, and ideally have some time for Q&A at the very end. So before I get started on the actual prompting, I want to go through the current state of things that are relevant to AI in creativity. AI is a tool. We as humans are accountable agents. I say this often, and I really harp on this point because it's an important one to me, is as you start to learn more AI, and if you are already an advanced user, I do not doubt you have seen this, the conversation around AI is a lot less about the technology, although that is very exciting, and a lot more about the social, cultural, and philosophical implications that it has for the way that we have engaged with our work, both personally and professionally. So to start that off and to make sure that we are all included at all levels, I want to start with the absolute basics of generative AI. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but it's an important mentality to go into. Now, I'll touch on briefly what differentiates AI versus generative AI. Artificial intelligence we've known and loved and used for decades now. Conceptually, it's existed much further than that. Generative AI is distinct because rather than simply mimicking the way we think, it mimics the way we create. And generative AI, that modifier of generative, is extremely important because it is the latest stage of evolution of a decades-long chain of programs, or models, I should say. Artificial intelligence, the way we think, it's a system that mimics how we operate and so forth. We've used it. If you've ever played a game on your phone, you've used AI. The next step up is machine learning. And machine learning is simply pattern recognition at speed, at scale. And that's an important note because if you've ever used spell check or an email filter, you've used machine intelligence. Now that pattern recognition takes a step up because if we think of pattern recognition as a square, the deep learning system basically becomes a cube. It's what gives rise to things like natural language processing, the way that generative AI talks to us, and computer vision. Deep learning is what permits AI to think and learn in ways that we do, specifically as lateral thinkers. So there's a story that I give quite a bit. I can't remember where I read it. I think it was one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, where essentially a group of medical students was split into two and told to solve a problem. A patient has an operable tumor, but it must be hit with a dose of radiation so high it will harm any living tissue it touches. One group is sent to figure it out. Another group, before they're sent, is given this story of a Chinese general that was faced with taking a castle. The general splits his forces, emerges victorious. That group of students was, I believe, 80% more likely to find the correct solution, which was hit the tumor from multiple angles with smaller doses of radiation. That sort of lateral problem solving is what makes us exceptional problem solvers and is what deep learning allows an AI to do. So if we look at deep learning and the systems that AI has built up to this point as essentially the mind of a computer or an AI, generative AI, the latest iteration, is its voice in its hands. It is the way that it can create. So with that in mind, and you're welcome to share in the chat, how smart is AI? Let me open my chat so I can see this. I'll give you like 30 seconds to answer. How smart do you think AI is? You can give me a metaphor. You can give me on a scale of 1 to 100, whatever you feel most comfortable. It's a good answer. Smart as the data it's given. 65 out of 100. I could give that one. It depends. It does depend. As smart as spell check. Smarter than Stephen Hawking. Infinite builds upon smart. Define smart. Good one, Eric. As smart as our prompts. I would say that's probably the most accurate answer. I wouldn't call this necessarily a trick question, but the reality is AI is not smart in the way that we engage with it. And yes, I baited you into the answer, right? But the reality is that AI is not smart. It's just fast. AI takes the data that we have provided it and uses that to process at a speed and scale that we can quite literally not even conceive of. At its core, AI is not a thinking machine, but an advanced probability engine. And that is an extremely important mindset to have when engaging with it, because it operates through something called tokenization, which we will talk about in just a moment. But understanding that an AI doesn't actually think the way we do, but actually tokenizes and is a probability engine means that when you use it, it's less about finding a needle in the haystack and more about removing the bales of hay where you are certain the needle is not hiding. Your job is to help it get as close as possible to the right answer. So it's less about finding the true positive and more about eliminating true negatives or false positives. Real quick, tokenization is the way that it understands us, and essentially it provides a weight to everything in the input that you have provided. Doesn't matter how it does it, and it does it all on the back end. I'm just explaining that essentially if you look at your prompt, pretend it's like all on a scale. Depending on the way the model was trained and the context in which you are asking, that will dictate the weights that your AI will give to specific verbiages. There are three key types of tokenization, and it helps to think of them as a spectrum. Right in the middle, you have word-based tokenization, where every word gets a specific value. On one side, you have character-based tokenization, where each individual character gets one. This is less common in Western alphabets, a lot more common and absolutely essential in mathematical operations. Now, on the other side of tokenization, you've got phrase-based, and this is how an AI understands idioms, right? So when you say piece of cake, the AI understands you're not talking about a dessert. So again, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to request it. It just happens behind the scenes. But it is helpful and essentially the foundation of what we use when we prompt. Because by understanding the tokenization and the way that an AI functions with probability, we become more effective and more linear in the way that we're able to engage with it. We are, in essence, approaching each request with the scientific method. And that's important because we want to avoid, essentially, the AI being incorrect or just fictional. What's it called when an AI lies to us? At this point, it's a vocabulary word we all know. My kids know. Or you can do it in the chat. Sorry. Hallucination. Thank you, Maria. Everyone now it's going to pour in. Hallucination. That's right. But here's the thing. Hallucination is not the best word to use because hallucination implies a moral or correct judgment. The truth is, a hallucination is not a bug, but a feature. A hallucination is an AI functioning as intended. Remember, a generative AI is simply trained to create something brand new. It has no concept of right, wrong, true, or false. That's up to you because that's your perspective. So once again, if we already know that an AI is inclined to hallucinate, it's our job to help give it the guidelines that will keep it on the straight and narrow, essentially bowling with bumpers on. So your job as the user, once again, is to help create a sort of narrow playing field for the AI to be able to pinpoint those answers. In media and photography and videography, we call it getting it right in the camera. If any of you are in the business, you've heard a client say, we'll just fix it in post, meaning we can fix it in editing later. That is a giant pain. The goal is to get as much right as possible in the camera to make it as easy as possible later on. This is no different. So to do that, we're quickly going to go through a sort of basic level prompting course that'll teach you a little bit of the techniques that I teach in these classes regularly to make sure that you have the essentials that are going to lead us to actually developing content and using it for our creative purposes. We've all heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out. In this case, input quality leads to output quality. I believe someone said it earlier when I asked how smart AI is. There are three key pillars when we are prompting that we want to focus on. The first one is clarity. If you have a meandering output or you're not getting exactly what you want, clarity is usually the first step. An ambiguous or vague prompt gives the AI way too much field in which to operate. You want to be very clear about what you are asking. And in the coming moments, we are going to go through a series of techniques that will help you be as clear as possible. The next one is context. And I'm sure you've seen LinkedIn and other places where act as a marketing director. You are an HR executive, that kind of thing. That is just one form of providing a generative AI context for which we operate. Once again, we are doing it within a playing field or a box. So context is essentially telling it what sport we are playing. The last one is specificity. Be specific. One of the key mistakes that I see when prompting is long prompts with multiple requests. It helps to break down larger prompts into smaller pieces and slowly build up from there. And the refrain, if any of you have taken any of my classes before, there are a lot of you, so it's possible, you've heard me say, we bake the bricks that build the walls, that make the houses, that create communities. That's the mentality when prompting that you want to engage with as you build from the smallest possible unit upwards. And that's the mistake that I'm seeing at enterprise level where people want to use AI like a verb and they're trying to do too much too fast. So let me see. Oh, sorry. I'm getting a request. Move my avatar to the right so it doesn't cover text. You know what? You've already seen me and I have minimal ego. So can I fix it now? Is that sufficient? Can you confirm that I'm no longer in? I've Lilliputian to myself. Outstanding. And so we continue. So to recap, we're going through clarity, context, and specificity, right? We want to get the smallest pieces and work our way up. So if you received the reminder email, you've already been asked to make sure you had an account open and available. Today, we're going to be using ChatGPT and Sora. Okay, you don't need to have accounts for the other stuff. Those are the two that you'll be using today. I'll show you some of the other ones towards the end. So let's go ahead and open ChatGPT and just get a little bit of a warm up in. I know you've already done it. Bear with me. There's method to the madness. We're going to practice. And there's a reason that I've bolded and bracketed sci-fi. Today, we're just going to write a quick scene breakdown. We're going to do a 15-second sci-fi film. So right now, all I want you to do is ask ChatGPT, help me write a brief scene breakdown for a 15-second film. You can choose the genre. In case anything was unclear, I am a giant sci-fi nerd, which is part of the reason I'm super into AI, but you are welcome to choose fantasy, film noir, whatever you prefer. Thank you, Don. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. As a side note, for those of you that may have missed earlier text because my giant head was in the way, I will provide a PDF of this to Don, and he can disseminate it for those of you that are part of the class, so you can pick up on anything you missed. Okay, so assuming you're already getting your outputs, because again, AI is fast, you're getting one of two things. Either you're getting a series of clarifying questions from your generative AI saying, okay, I'd love to do that. Here are things that I need to know: time period, character, setting, and so forth. Or if you've used it extensively, it's shot its shot. So it's helpful to understand that when you ask an AI to do something, there's a series of concentric circles that it operates within. This is not a hard rule, but it's helpful to kind of picture this. The first is it's going to go to the context of the prompt. The next is going to go to the context of your immediate conversation. Next, it's going to go out to the context of all conversations you've had, especially if you have used my data, right? So it's going to go to all conversations, that you've had and everything that it knows about you. And then it's going to go out to the world at large. So if you've used your AI extensively, it may have shot its shot and done its best job based on what it knows about you and what you are using it for. But once again, generally, that won't be the final product because it's probably going to be a little loose. It's not going to be exactly what you want. This is a pretty unclear prompt. So let's expand. Let's see the difference now if we have a more specific prompt with a little more context. So in this one, we're going to ask for a 5-scene breakdown for a 15-second film. For the record, you are welcome to take a screenshot of this and also upload it if you'd rather not type it. It will be able to read that screenshot if it's easier. But I appreciate Don helping me with copy and pasting. You'll notice that the specificity here is that each scene should be no more than 3 seconds. You should describe it in 1 to 3 sentences. You are controlling for output in this case. You're asking for the details you want. And I'll pause here for like another minute or so to let your outputs come through. Again, thank you, Don. I really thought I had these in the notes, and they're not there. I believe it's safe to say that whatever output you're getting from this is significantly better from the first one. As you're seeing the outputs coming through on this one, you'll notice that that clarity and specificity makes all the difference. You are no longer getting clarifying questions. The AI feels a lot more confident in providing an accurate answer and not hallucinating. Now, what if you want to control for creativity just a little bit? Now, you can certainly ask your AI, but I'll teach you a shorthand. Is anyone familiar with the term temperature as it relates to AI, not obviously the climate? Yes, Randy is familiar with temperature. So for those of you that are not, we're going to try something kind of fun because temperature is a shorthand for how deterministic you want your AI to be. In other words, are you looking for festive and warm, or are you looking for cool and professional? Temperature is a functionally infinite setting, but it's helpful to know that the closer you are to 0, the more deterministic you are asking the AI to be. Meaning you want it to be more, I was going to say Terminator, but I don't want that analogy in our minds. So let's just say more robotic versus a little more warm or human-like, perhaps. If you're writing an email, you can get 2 different emails. You get one very professional, one very excited, a lot of emojis. The higher you get, the more excitable it will be. Now, a temperature beyond 1 or 2 is it's not particularly useful for text-based outputs, because at that point, like if you ask for a temperature of 10, and you can try this, you're going to start getting into like fever dream territory, lots of weird analogies and metaphors, a lot of emojis and so forth. But it is a fun one to use when you're creating visuals, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But let's go ahead and try it. That's a great one, Don. There's another one on where you can ask or re-ask for your previous prompt and say, give me 2 versions of the previous screenplay, one using a temperature of 0 and another using a temperature of 1. Or you can copy and paste Don's extremely helpful example. That's right, Shannon. You'll notice that. I did like your moon email. It was Tom. Whoever just had that and deleted it. I'm sorry. I'm glad I caught it before it went away. Remember to include everyone must bring your own suit. All right, so as you're getting your outputs now, you can already see, as Shannon pointed out, that you're going to have a pretty wide range between the 2 of them. Temperature is a great shorthand to adjust very quickly. Now, it's important to note, while I refer to it as kind of flipping the dial, you're not actually doing anything. Unless you have backend or API access, meaning you actually have access to the training data and the model itself, you are not adjusting anything. What you are telling the generative AI to do is that you want it more or less deterministic based on the number you have provided. It is simply shorthand for extra creativity. I'll pause here for a moment because I think I've talked at you enough. Oh, wait, are there anything I can clarify? Any questions up to this point? wait about 5 to 10 more seconds to see if anyone types it, then we'll continue. Yeah, Julian, go ahead. Karen, before Julian asks, yes, it is standard. Generative AI knows. And the techniques that we're going to talk about today are ubiquitous across Copilot, Gemini, and so forth. So they're platform agnostic. Is the temperature same as tone or different? Tone can be interpreted as different things, especially now that we're talking about creativity. Tone could be color tone. It could be the tone of a scene. Temperature is a very specific knob and dial that you can adjust, that generative AI knows precisely what you're asking about. You just need to phrase it as, give me a temperature of. Because worded incorrectly, I've seen it, like, for instance, I did an HR training class where I said, ask for a job description using temperature 0 and 1. And the way someone phrased it, they ended up getting a job description for a job in the Gobi Desert versus one in the Arctic. So just be cautious of how you phrase things. Is it useful to provide a GPT feedback on the answers it offers? I mean, something like, that's not what I meant. Great output. This is not useful. Yes, that can be helpful. It depends on your ultimate goal. There is a more efficient way of doing that I'll take 2 minutes at the end to run through really quickly. And that's the master or system prompt, which makes it a little easier than individually giving it feedback on each prompt. There's a way to like sort of do it as an umbrella, which we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, feedback never hurts because it will learn from you. You're welcome, Julian. Now, you may have heard the term RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And Retrieval Augmented Generation is a very fancy way of just saying you're uploading something or providing a link. You are, in essence, creating a specific go fetch command for a generative AI. I am oversimplifying some of these concepts, but the truth is that you don't really need to overcomplicate them either. Retrieval Augmented Generation means that you are providing a very specific place or link for the AI to get something. So I asked you all to bring a photo of yourself, a loved one, a favorite character. When we use that later, that will be an example of Retrieval Augmented Generation. You are providing something that makes it much easier for the AI to operate from. In essence, you are creating a shorthand for context. It's no different than when we cite our sources when we used to write our papers in college, appropriate for a Stanford talk. Citing your paper and referring to your paper or referring to an outside source is functionally the same as Retrieval Augmented Generation. That's what you did with the MLA formatting, which I don't think they use anymore. I may have just dated myself. So I'll pause here for a few minutes to give you time, all right? Go back and choose the version of the screenplay that you prefer. Is it more deterministic and a little colder? Do you want the warmer, more creative one? Pick one of them, and then using that version, refine those scenes using something. You can give it a URL. You can find a URL for your favorite movie. You can say refine or make it more like the tone of Casablanca, Citizen Kane, Moana, K-pop Demon Hunters, for those of you with kids between 5 and 10 currently. And I'll pause here because I don't think the welcome email said bring a link. So I'll give you a second. I'll wait for I'll do like a 3-minute pause, 2 to 3 minute pause. Don, you're getting very good at the transcription, man. It's just like a video now. Very impressive. As you're working, for those of you with advanced skills, I recommend using the time to challenge yourself. We're going to go through towards the end, Runway ML, 11 labs, and that kind of thing. But I just recommend using this time to your advantage. Part of getting great at AI isn't just about learning technology, it's practice, right? No different than going to a gym. You don't go to a gym to learn to run. You go for someone to tell you how long and how fast. You have carved out this time to practice and train. So I hope we're all using it to the best of our ability. We'll do about 1 more minute and then we'll move on. if you're finished or if you have an output, I'd be interested to see what you found to be different as you've progressed up to this point. So what have you noticed as you use temperature, you selected your version and you refined it using something else within your purview? So any thoughts, anything surprising? It picked up the tone of the movie being referenced. Interesting. Vivienne, what movie were you referencing? Just out of curiosity, as a cinephile. Ooh, okay. Lots of smirks and dry remarks. Oh, classic. I think I just watched it 4 times. My kids are obsessed with it, which is nice. It's a good tradition to continue. All right. So let's move forward as we're building out Hamilton, and it brought lots of color references. I am ashamed to admit this. I just watched Hamilton for the first time over in December. I will own that. I should have watched it a long time ago. It was excellent. So what you've noticed and how you've seen us build is slowly building the toolkit for more specificity and more opportunities to provide context for our generative AI. We're going to go one step further with, I won't call it an advanced technique, but something that is extremely helpful. Now, I know it's a running joke on social media, hashtag this, hashtag that, but hashtags are essential when you want an AI to parse out precisely what you mean. When you're prompting, you are asking the AI to make a lot of judgment calls on what you want if you've asked it to do something. What hashtagging essentially does, it creates signposts for where things belong. You are functionally organizing a prompt in a way that is helpful for an AI to very quickly say, there, and there. You are labeling your tools. Hashtags are an important part of getting it right in the camera, as we said earlier. You will see a quick example. You don't need to copy it. This is just to give you an example of how I've broken it down. I'm going to show you a much more detailed one, probably like 20-ish minutes or so. But for right now, it's just helpful to see, because on the next slide, we are going to practice. So once again, I will pause here and I'll give you plenty of time for this one because this is a much more extensive prompt. Take a few minutes and further develop your prompt with what you are looking for. One of the hashtags not on there is hashtag reference, where you could use retrieval augmented generation if you want to use Home Alone or Philadelphia Story. So go ahead and restructure your prompt. Ask it from nothing again and just go one by one on what you think would be important to you. And let's see what the difference is on this particular output. And again, I'll pause here for like a good 3 or 4 minutes. You are welcome if you get stuck or if you have questions. You can certainly come off mute or you can chat if you prefer. Otherwise, I'm just going to quietly stare awkwardly at the class. Maria, if I understand your question, you're just simply putting in the one-word hashtag. So let me go back. A hashtag isn't just taking the place of the prompt. What you are doing is marking, essentially we are marking what comes next. So in this case, you'll see we do hashtag role, and then you're giving the AI its role. So basically what comes after the hashtag is being marked as what is as what is being posted there. So you're not just simply doing hashtag role, hashtag reference. The list on the next slide was very simply just a list of examples to do. Great. Let's see. Names were added, including archetypes. Nice. All right, Heidi. That'll be helpful in a later lesson. You'll see why that'll be important in just a moment. Yeah, I apologize if I wasn't clear enough earlier, but you want, yeah, maybe I'll have to reformat this slide a little bit. But essentially, you are posting what comes next, and then you are providing that information to the generative AI. The person who just messaged me that was arrived late, we are doing a series of exercises, practicing our prompting. We are currently working in ChatGPT, building a screenplay to work on our creative tool usage. You're welcome. All right, Daniela, that's exciting. Do about another minute, and then we'll move on. Up to this point, hopefully these techniques are showing you just how much more you can do with just a few changes. And frankly, it's intoxicating. Like you get excited about, oh, I can do this. And I didn't realize that I could. And it's those moments of, oh, that makes generative AI so exciting. So as you continue to build your repertoire and your toolkit, you'll start to understand how to build these things together. And a lot of this really is trial and error, which reiterates the importance of approaching this with a background and mentality of the scientific method. You want to change as few variables as possible so that if something breaks, you can pinpoint where it broke and adjust accordingly. Let me see the prompts so far. Thanks, Don. That's a great recap. Okay. So assuming that you're pretty far along, I've gotten some great responses so far. We'll go on to the last technique that we'll cover, which is when you want to explore a multitude of options all at once. I told you all of these techniques can be used across any large language model, Gemini, GPT, Copilot, and so forth. This particular technique is no different if you specify it. Tree of thought is a very common technique used when you want to approach any sort of task and get multiple possible solutions. In the workplace, this could be, I have to have a difficult conversation with a manager or a coworker. This is my personality type. Give me 3 ways to approach it. In this case, it would be, I want X number of different potential screenplay ideas or potential actions or climaxes that we can reach. This is very helpful in the earliest stages of iteration. Tree of thought is often used in conjunction with a technique called chain of thought that helps us go real deep into an idea. We're not going to cover it. I just mention it so it's on the recording. And for those of you that want to overachieve, you can try it at a later date. But for right now, we'll focus on tree of thought. We're going to prompt our AI to give us several different options, right? So once again, you can change the genre, you can change the role. Maybe you actually want a director of photography or cinematographer's perspective, and you want 3 different ways to light a scene. Or you want a photographer's perspective. What are 3 different backgrounds for this new dress that we're coming out for the spring lineup? Yes, I can go back to the previous slide. Sorry about that. So I'll cover this since Heidi asked, I'll cover this real quick. You'll notice that once again, we're being very intentional about the focus when we're using tree of thought. What are we doing? How many outputs am I asking for? And what kind of a format do I want the output in? Do I want a table? Do I want a list? Do I want an entire run-on paragraph? Heidi, you'll be my North Star. Tell me when you're good, and I'll move on to the next one. All right. So let's practice tree of thought, because this is a big one. I use this one a lot in work and all kinds of things. So you'll notice this is an example. We're using the tree of thought. You can simply also request using tree of thought, give me X. A very common question I get, do I need to ask for tree of thought? Can I just ask it for 3 different things? Yes. But we use the specific technique because, once again, we want to minimize the opportunity for the AI to kind of meander on its own. So by always using and templatizing our technique, we become more efficient at using them, and our AI becomes more effective at understanding what we're trying to do. So once again, I'll pause for about 2.5, 3 minutes here. And about another minute, and then we'll move forward. Okay. So now that we've gotten all our prompt practicing in, and much like video games in the late 70s, early 80s, we focused purely on text-based work, let's make it real. Let's actually start to use visuals and use Sora now to start bringing our ideas to life. So for those of you that haven't, you can go to Sora. I think it's like Sora ChatGPT. Yeah, sora.chatgpt.com. If you have not created a profile, go ahead and do so now. A thing to note, having had functionally 4 or 5 months to prepare for this, I probably could have created a wild film. But I challenged myself to only operate in the last 48 hours. So I started fully clean accounts on Sora, 11 Labs, Runway, and so forth, and just saw what I could do. So everything that you'll see today was created in the last 48 hours, and that's by design. It's not perfect. I will definitely tweak it if I use it for anything else, but it's helpful so that you know the context and we're all working kind of from the same level. Thank you for the link, Don. So Sora is an excellent and a lot of a fun program to use. I will caution you, it is memory intensive. Does it have it on here? Oftentimes, I don't even know if it says it anymore, but oftentimes it'll say like 9 gigabytes of memory being used. So it can be memory intensive. I don't recommend leaving it open if you're not actively using it. But Sora allows you to essentially describe your video and have the output come out. Or you go into storyboard mode where you can actually go scene by scene and develop your story. Before we actually get into using it, I'll show you what it looks like to use the techniques that we just learned and the evolution of those techniques, of how we start getting a little more effective and a little more complex. So to start, we'll just go with the basic prompting. Now, for these next few examples, I just used the storyboard mechanic on Sora. So starting with basic prompting, just like we said earlier, give me a screenplay with no further context. That's what we tried this. Once again, I'm a huge sci-fi geek, so this is all sci-fi. You are welcome to continue on whatever genre you have chosen. So this is purely the example given with the basic prompting. Let's see how it turned out. It is 20 seconds long.
These plants are scarier than the wildlife back home.
Readings are climbing. Whatever's ahead is active.
That door, it looks alive.
Everyone ready?
Wait, something's...
Down!
So that's the basic prompt, right? Not bad, but it's not even close to what I would want from a finished product. So right here is the first clue that I said earlier, that AI is not replacing us. Because no matter how many times I have iterated in the years that I've been using this, there is never a perfect product that comes out the other side. So if we take it one step further and we go into specific prompting, meaning we start providing that context and specificity, what happens then?
That door's big enough for a starship.
Something's moving.
Company. Big, armored, and hostile.
So that was much better than the first one. A couple of things to note. The sound effects and dialogue matched up more closely scene by scene. And from the beginning, we had that team of 3 adventurers we were asking. Now, a caveat. For those of you that will be working on Sora today, and when we're prompting together, do not use more than one character. If this is your first time using it, that is especially important. If you're an advanced user, go nuts. Using more than one character escalates variability very quickly. I'm using it because I wanted to see what I could do in the course of 48 hours, and I have some experience with this, but I highly recommend you start with one and focus on getting that done correctly before you move into a multitude of characters. Now, the reason that I harp on the idea of prompting should be the scientific method is because as we start to prompt, you'll notice that the exact same prompt, meaning the one that you're reading right now, run twice in a row provides a completely different result. Once again, this prompt I just ran for a second time. Here's the second one that we received.
That door's enormous. Whatever built it didn't want visitors.
Or wanted to keep something inside.
Hold. Something's moving.
Guardian coming down!
So that was a completely different output. In that case, we were missing that final Guardian that came down. There's a couple of things that weren't precisely what we were looking for, right? But it's helpful to see that the same prompt, same day, within minutes of each other, creates a wholly different result. So sometimes it could be as simple as just run it again and see what happens. But this is why, once again, it's very important that you know precisely how your prompting is structured. So I'll pause here and let's practice. Go ahead and open your Sora account. I want you to create a brief short film with the lessons that you've learned up to now. Just go ahead and prompt. No need to get fancy. You can get a little bit detailed in the prompt section. And I'll remind you that you can do it one of 2 ways. You can very simply just, sorry, Sora, see, like this, it's stalled a little bit. You can use the storyboard feature. It's still in beta, but it's pretty cool. You would want to change the length of each scene as you're using it. Or you can very simply just request a video right from the very first page. Whichever one you feel most comfortable with. I can tell you just describing a video is going to be a little bit faster than going through the scene-by-scene process. I will pause here for about 5 minutes before we move on to the next exercise. A quick note, I believe it was in the email. The tools that we're using today are purely for convenience and just because that's the ones I'm experienced with. Stanford does not endorse any of them. I am not endorsing any of them. These are just the tools that I use Furthermore, I assume we are all adults. I cannot be responsible for whatever content happens to be on this website. Just want to create that caveat as we go into this, because there's weird stuff on it. As always, if you get stuck, if you have questions or anything that you particularly find kind of cool, you are welcome to share it in the chat or come off mute and ask me. A good question, Aaron. So yeah, it'll go quick, Jay. Just be patient. It'll happen. So to your point, Aaron, the way it works is the way it's been trained. So a model has input and output. Visual generators are trained to take a prompt, conceptualize it through tokenization, and then create the closest thing that it can consider or it can think of that matches the verbal prompt that you've created. In short, it is trained to do that. So you have some models that will respond with words and text. Other ones will respond with visuals. Either that's a still image or a video. How it functions is a little above me. I can't tell you the nuts and bolts of it. It's just the way that they are trained and built to design to create. Some of them you're going to see later. 11 Labs is designed to take text and create audio with it. But all of this goes back to natural language processing and tokenization, which is why we harped on those earlier techniques so much, is because by understanding that all AI functions like a probability engine, you're able to better get to the specific output that you will find useful and effective. Did it process, Jay? Do you have your film yet? It's requiring a phone number. That's a good question. I don't know, Megby. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's a way to get around that. Peter, it should not matter if you use bullet points or paragraphs. As I said, Sora is a little memory intensive. The biggest convenience about Sora for me is that it exists on a phone, and it's an app on my phone. How long does it take after it says added to queue? It shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Mine maybe took 3 to 5 minutes each. It could take a little bit longer. There's a lot of heavy use. I would imagine most of you are on a free account, which does get deprioritized to paid accounts. So we'll give it a few minutes. If in another minute or two, yeah, sure, I can do that. Let's see. Describe our video. That's actually it's a queue. Busy day for Sora. Today must be content creation. So if you look on your left-hand side, you should see a your little human avatar thingy. This is your progress wheel over here. Yeah, and to Paul's point, if you go to your drafts, that's precisely right. If you go to your this is your profile, your drafts folder is right in your profile. That's true, Queenie. On a free account, you will be limited to the number of videos that you can generate. We're so close, everybody. Way to hang in there. How large are they for downloading? A good question, Justice. It depends. Now, Sora, unfortunately, is not particularly easy to download from. It's designed that you can post the videos. For me to download them, I kind of had to do the workaround where I did screen record and separate audio recording, and then I put them together in an editing suite just so I could include them in this PowerPoint. They're not easily downloadable, which is why we'll get into some other tools in just a minute. All right, let's see what this one looks like.
It's mapping the whole site. Look at those towers.
These shapes, they match the star paths. Ancient navigators, perhaps.
Whatever they were, they left us a story.
And maybe a destination.
It's mapping the whole...
There you go. All that from a prompt. The 10-second sci-fi animated short that shows a human and alien exploring ruins on a far-off world. How do you edit what you have already done? On Sora itself, you should be able to edit if you click on the little pencil up here on the right-hand side. You are often able to fix this a little bit, but if you're trying to edit, you're going to have to I find it more helpful to iterate a new prompt and create a separate video than to try to work off an existing post when you're working on Sora. Full disclosure, I don't use Sora very much for anything major. I mostly use it for fun. There are other tools that I'll get to, but depending on your level of need, Sora fills a very good gap if you just kind of need informal content created fairly quickly. So if you operate a lot on social media, there are ways to use Sora very quickly to share it. So Sora's convenience helps a lot. But Sora, like ChatGPT, is a generalist. Being a generalist, it will do a lot of things very well, but it won't do anything super well. That's where specialty applications and specialty AI systems come into play, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Now, that was a good example of our drafts, right? Of just showing what it would look like if we were to do a very simple prompt. You've already seen as we get more specific what it looks like. You will recall that the next level up that we did was hashtag prompting. Hashtag prompting is what really changes the game, and you're going to see the difference in just a second. So even from the opening frame, I'll go back to the basic prompt. A little cartoony, a little bit light, right? This one's a little bit better. The lighting is a little bit more dramatic. The twin suns that I requested is in there. But now look at the hashtag and look at the difference. A very different product. Aaron, I'll cut to you in just a second.
These walls, they're ancient but massive.
The engineering is unlike anything in the archives.
First pass, I didn't do any edits. I didn't change anything on that. That was just what came out of the first hashtag. Really, the only notes I have are on the final frame and dialogue. These are how I would adjust. But you can already see that the quality is significantly better than the previous iterations because we provided the signposts to understand what we wanted to get out of it. Now, what did that look like? This. This is case in point. Context and specificity and clarity. We are being very clear of what we want for each individual scene. Now, things that made it extra difficult, I had multiple characters involved. There were 5 scenes of 3 seconds each that the Sora storyboard function. So there were a lot of confounding variables that made it a little more challenging. But this is the level of detail that you'll want to go into. Now, to Aaron's question, how do we create a series of images or videos in the same style? We will get to that because that's coming up very soon. So stay tuned, Aaron, because there's more. But this is giving you an example of what the prompting should look like. So we'll take a few minutes. Let's try this again. You can just do the main description, or we can go into the storyboard if you prefer. But I will do this again and show you the difference of what it could look like if we did the same thing that we just did, but now with hashtags. So there we go. So you can see Sora's website delays quite a bit. The optimization is not ideal, and it does take a while, which is why I tend to use other tools, which I will get to in a minute. Wow, it's dragging pretty heavily right now. You're welcome, Joe. A blank white screen always inspires confidence in technology, ladies and gentlemen. All right, well, that goes on. If you're having better luck than me with Sora, you can continue and go ahead and start to build your hashtag prompt and see if it makes a difference. Just to compare apples to apples, use the same framing that you did for the last one. So if you did a scene of a couple breaking up at a cafe, or a detective on a smoky, windswept night, whatever that looked like, do the same thing, but now use hashtags to break down and create precisely the scene that you're trying to do. Set the scene, set the lighting, set the tone. This is where we become the cinematographers you want to be. Start to think through what that looks like. Close this. Try again. All right. So funny. Let's see. I'm very clear that I've misspelled. So one of the things to note, the point of AI is to save us time. If you recall, one of the oldest and most common AIs we have is spell check. So if you can get yourself out of the habit of backspacing furiously when you misspell something, it's going to save you a ton of time in the long run. Remember, spell check is AI. It will figure it out based on the rest of the context. So I have a question saying, have I tried AI generating hashtag prompts using a simple prompt and then adding that to Sora? The answer is yes. So if you want, you can always, this is what makes AI so exciting and interesting is it is simultaneously, it is basically an intern with every PhD imaginable. So it can do anything. It just needs to know what to do. So if you want help creating prompts, ask the AI. If you're confused on what to do next, ask the AI. The AI exists to operate at speed and scale. It's meant to just go through it. So where the internet gave us access to the sum total of human knowledge, generative AI gives us a way to curate that knowledge very quickly. What about interaction or dialogues in the video? How can I input them in the format of, you could try using dialogue. You could try doing hashtag audio, hashtag line. That's one of those that you'll need to iterate a little bit, Natalia, but it is easier on other platforms, which again, I'm going to cover in just a second. So let's see. Oh, sorry, Karen, I missed your question. Should we still use storyboard? Entirely up to you. You can. I mean, fast is relative, but just describing your video is a little bit faster. So I would just recommend using that. But if you've already been using storyboard, please continue and see what comes out. Good question, Michael. They're not predefined. They're any nouns. So it's still going to use natural language processing to try to understand what the hashtag means, what that word means. But you are in essence marking that word, whatever that word means, you are creating the value of that word. Think of it like an algebra equation. So I'm sorry if you hate math. But if you are essentially providing the value of X, and then X is put into the formula, which is functionally your prompt.
Charts. Patterns, like your star charts.
That world, it isn't on any of ours.
Yet they knew you, and us.
An invitation.
Patterns.
A little better, a little more specific. Again, nothing that I would run with, but just shows you the distinction between a simple prompt and a hashtag prompt. Now, we've been practicing up to this point, which is technically what we're going to do in just a moment. I'll close this since it's dragging so much. So we won't necessarily jump into this practice, but I want to show you the next step in the creative process. So this is where the human element comes into play. So using only the 4 Sora videos that you just saw me, not the 2 that you saw me create live, but the 4 that I just showed you within this presentation, here's this version now. So for context, let me go back real quick and show you the original hashtag prompt because that was the baseline that I used.
These walls, they're ancient but massive.
The engineering is unlike anything in the archives.
So that's the original one. Now, using that baseline,
These plants are scarier than the wildlife back home.
That door's enormous. Whatever built it didn't want visitors.
Or wanted to keep something inside.
Company. Oh, big, armored, and hostile.
Guardian coming down!
again, from a production standpoint, pretty flawed nonetheless. But I essentially took the best bits of each one and formed it into a slightly more cohesive narrative. It's not perfect by any means. But this is the human element that's still required in how we create. So the distinction here is the things that I can't do, or that would still take weeks to do, modeling characters, recording dialogue, and that kind of thing, are much faster. To give you an idea of what it took to create that, this is the picture screenshot of my editing suite. So I use Final Cut. And I took all the little bits and bobs and I just started adding the audio and all that. This is where the human element comes into play. The human element of really taking the content that you have developed and making it your own. Where all of a sudden now it does become art. It does become something potentially copyrightable because you are involved, because you've touched it and made it. AI supported the development of the content. You fine-tuned it into a finished product, which is what we're going to get into next, the rules of fine-tuning. So I think, let me scroll up. Was it Aaron that asked the question? Creating a series of images and the videos in the same style. Guess what? That's this section. There are 3 core areas that you need to focus on when you want to maintain consistency throughout. Character lock, style lock, and then controlling the camera. The camera one we won't focus on as much. That one's helpful, but really the key ones are characters and style. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Character lock is creating a consistent character. You do this by essentially creating a mapping of who that character might be. When you're creating this within ChatGPT, and I recommend you start there, you are asking it first and foremost to commit this to persistent memory. ChatGPT has two essential memory patterns. One is there's short-term memory that looks at your conversation and other conversations. Another one is the long-term memory that has saved within its actual model. That is what you want to do. You want to create a character that it remembers so that you can call on that character by name. So you would say something like, commit this to persistent memory. I'm creating a character named Maya Chen. She's 34. She's Chinese American, 5'6", athletic with narrow shoulders, and so forth. And then ChatGPT is going to reply and say, great, from now on, you can always call on Maya Chen. A style lock works very much the same way. You are, in essence, asking it once again to commit this to persistent memory, and you are creating a visual style that you want to replicate throughout your storyboarding, throughout what you are building. Now, you can create a visual tone. You can create an image filter. You can create any number of things because, once again, you are creating the value of a variable. So you are saying that my visual style is cinematic realism, and here is what that entails. Finally, with camera controls, you would do the same thing. You would say, for when I ask for close-up cameras, I want a 200 millimeter lens with an aperture of 2.8 and extreme close-up where the face takes up 90% of the frame. Now, I used a lot of photography terminology there, but this is where your expertise in your particular field comes into play. This is why I insist that it's not about AI. It's just knowing how to use the tool. The competency piece comes from your own experience in your particular field. Create the character, create the visual style, create camera angles. And that's what helps you maintain throughout the entirety of this process when you want to refer to specific ways. It's your shorthand to really iterating your specific storyboard. Now, I said this earlier, you want to focus on a single character. That is extremely important at the beginning. Get it right with one, and then you can start to create more than one. It also helps if you create versions. So in Maya's case, maybe one Maya has a leather jacket. This is Maya when she goes to race motorcycles. This is Maya when she goes to her Big Brothers Big Sisters program on weekends. Whatever that looks like, you want to have those iterations. Here's the catch, the analog sort of solution. Open a separate notes file where you track all of this. Yes, ChatGPT will remember anything you ask it to. You won't. Make sure you keep a log of everything you're doing and track those changes accordingly so that you know that Maya Chen 1.0 is just her in her everyday casual sweatsuit. Maya 1.2 is her in her motorcycle outfit, full leathers, helmet, gloves, and the whole nine, right? That's how you're going to maintain your structure and maintain that consistency that Aaron asked me about earlier. And finally, you want to copy and paste. These systems reward a Dr. Seuss-like repetition. So, right? Hop on pop, hop, pop, hop, like that kind of thing. You want to say, Maya rides a motorcycle. Maya's motorcycle is going fast. Maya rides to the school. It almost feels childlike because it is. You are functioning with a genius toddler. I mean, genius doesn't even begin to describe it. So you want to make sure that you are providing as much of that context as possible. I have a question here that says, if I focus on one character, how do I integrate all the characters? Be patient, I will get to that because that's what I did and I'll show you how I did it. Before we do that, let's take a few minutes and actually go into the depth of what it looks like to create that single character. So I asked you to bring a headshot or a favorite character or something like that. Here's where you're going to do it. Go back to ChatGPT and create your character. So you're going to go and break down whatever character it is, and whatever character you have created, you're going to name it, give it characteristics, give it a suit, the whole thing, whatever it looks like. And then also attach your photo, attach the thing that you want it to reference. Hey, that sounds like Retrieval Augmented Generation. So let's go ahead and create that first character, and we'll get to what it looks like to creating more of them. user, or you're feeling like, oh, I got this, start creating a style guide for yourself. Create camera angles. Create something that is helpful for you in a future iteration, either for something you actually or this. Using a new chat. Great question, Maria. Yes, helpfully use a new chat. You don't have to, since we've been chatting about film, but it would be helpful. If it's helpful for you and you're going to use this moving forward, yes, a new chat. Janice, good question. We're going back to ChatGPT. I believe I said that, but thank you for clarifying that. We're going to go back to ChatGPT because this is kind of where it all begins before we start to build off of this. Can you put the prompt here or provide some? Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back to Maya's slide. So this is a good example that you can follow to create your own character. What is my take on issues associated with using existing IP to create something new? That's a good question, Paul. I don't have a good answer for that. There are a lot of questions coming up around ownership and creativity. I can tell you that for now, AI companies are kind of answering it for you, because if you touch too closely to violating their copyright policy, it'll tell you that it's doing that, and then it just won't produce the result. Sometimes it's kind of like gray area where you're like, that's not even close, but you know what you triggered with your request. Sometimes just doing it again gives you something else. For what it's worth, my influences were Mass Effect, which is a huge video game, The Expanse, a series of books, and now a series, which are all behind me, by the way, and a few other sources that are pretty well known and major IPs. Take that with a grain of salt. I do make an effort, and I shouldn't say I make an effort. I create pains to make sure that everything I do is legally distinct. But you're asking questions that are well above any of our pay grades. Those are all like US PTO questions, Supreme Court, that kind of thing. We'll do about 2 more minutes in character creation. A reminder, make sure you specify with ChatGPT to say commit to persistent memory. And once you've prompted, at the end of it, you will see a little like thing that says memory updated. It's going to be a little like oval button. If you don't see that, it wasn't committed, but that should work. And then it's going to say something like, got it. From now on, Maya Chen is this. To test your character, once you've already trained your AI on who the character is, you can simply say, give me a shot of Maya doing something. Good question, Kat. All chats. So you can refer to Maya anywhere else. And I will show that in like our last minute. I will show you where to find that, because that's a big one. So now that you have a consistent character, you can put them in all kinds of wacky situations. You can keep calling on that. And this is important because ChatGPT becomes the foundation, could become the foundation of the storyboarding that you will do with your specific characters. Now, because we're running close to the end of time, I will show you now what I created. For just so you understand, what you're about to see took me about 8 to 10 hours, give or take. There was a decent amount of editing involved. But I want to show you what's possible, because what you're about to see would have taken weeks once upon a time.
Mission recording, unit designation Padre 4 Tango 7, crew moniker, Patch. Despite the questionable nature of their acquisition, the coordinates were accurate. The Argento made planetfall 6 local day cycles ago. In light of the incident on Seraph 6B, we set down 25 kilometers from the ruins and proceeded on foot. The captain elected to keep the away team small to mitigate risk should this precursor ruin prove dangerous. A strange notion. They are all dangerous. Gaining access to the interior proved straightforward. The inner chamber led to a large core passage unlike anything in current fleet records. A novel precursor discovery would normally warrant further caution. Our human is an idiot. We have activated an unknown precursor defense matrix and are engaging. Argento is requested to support immediately. Combat protocols active. In moments like these, I am grateful she is our captain.
That was a series of characters created specifically for this class. Each character was individually developed with a specific image to build off of, and then scenes were painstakingly created little by little. I storyboarded the whole thing, right? So to the human looks it does look very familiar. Thank you. So the first one was Shep. This is the idiot human that set off the alarm. Esther, our alien captain. Patch, the robot that is narrating. And then, of course, the precursor guardian that jumps down at the end. Shep, I used a headshot of myself. Thank you, Don. Esther, I used a photo of my wife. She does not have purple skin. Patch and Guardian are both up here on the wall behind me. So it was just what was available so I could create something to show you an example. The style guide, I just used very basic. I didn't go into much detail. And then from there, I created a ton of reference shots. And I will show you a few of them real quick here. So they will take a minute to load, but you can see over here different iterations. And this is where the artist in you comes out. You start to think, what makes a movie effective? Where do I need a close-up? Where do I need a wide? Where do I transition? How do I build this? You can see I did a lot of these. As you start to build your reference shots, you build an entire library of the scene-by-scene shot that you'd like to do and what it looks like. And then from there, you go to a tool that we did not have time for, but hopefully a level 2 one we can go into. Go to workflow. You take each of those scenes, those reference shots, and you use something like Runway ML. And Runway allows you to create a video from a reference shot and a prompt. And unlike Sora, makes downloading extremely easy. Other times you can create a video with multiple reference shots. So for instance, that neat effect where the iris opens and the flames come out. The iris starts closed and opens with a bright, deep crimson glow. I had to get a shot of it closed, a shot of it open. It puts together the rest. Now, Runway ML does an excellent job of creating videos. And if you want, you can stay here because there are ways to create sound effects. If I go to my other workflow, there are input nodes where you can actually provide, the prompt and generate the audio. Now, as I said, anything that does one thing really well probably won't do anything else really well. So for audio, I do the same thing, but now I'll jump into a separate program, which is called 11 Labs. And 11 Labs is where you can either download existing sound effects and music or simply create your own. These are all existing ones, or you can ask it to create your own for a very easily downloaded. And then finally, as I said, it took about 8 to 10 hours. So finally, you go to your editing suite and you pull it all together. Whatever you're using. iMovie works just fine if you're working on a Mac. But this is, one second. So this is what it looks like when you put the scenes, sound effects, music, and voiceover all together. I don't expect you, if you have no experience with an editing platform, I don't expect you to do this right off the gate. What I'm trying to show you is that your involvement isn't just important, it's absolutely critical to get the program, to get the actual outputs that you really want. The more time and effort you put into your practice, the more prepared you are to create the content that you really can be proud of. So yeah, I'm happy to list all the programs that I've used. Give me a second here. So we used ChatGPT, Sora, Runway ML, 11 Labs, and then for editing, I use Final Cut Pro, but iMovie works just fine. Yes, thank you. And Mark, Adobe Premiere works just fine as well. This is one of those Sega or Nintendo questions. It's whichever one you're most comfortable in. So you can use iMovie. There's plenty of very basic film editors that you can use. So this is really what I wanted to show you. And the whole point of this is that you understand that it takes practice and it does take your involvement. Yes, there's low-hanging fruit that you can produce, but how much of Twitter, or whatever it's called now, Twitter or YouTube is just AI slop? There's a reason that you scroll through it quickly. If you want to create quality content that you can be proud of, it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time, but the results are a lot of fun. I can tell you that at the end of my 10 hours of work, that's something I'm going to go back to because it's kind of neat. It's a fun concept that I want to play with, and I'm going to keep working on it. My kids loved it when they watched it. So I highly recommend that you keep going through it. Now, I want to show you one last thing before we cut, which is the system prompt. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm just going to jump in and show you where it is. So the system or the master prompt is a way to manage everything from the top down. So if you have a job, or a very specific job that you do every day regularly, or if you have specific content that you are creating, you can set that up inside of what's called the custom instructions. So in this case, I use mine for a lot of work stuff. So I have a reality filter tucked into here, core principles and that kind of thing. Your custom instructions should change regularly depending on the task that you're doing, because the custom instructions inform everything that comes below. As you start to work with your GPT more and more often, oh, sorry, let me go back one. All the way at the bottom of personalization, you have memory. If you have committed something to persistent memory, this is where you will find it. So you'll notice these are all the characters that I built for what you just saw. This is where you'll find it. This is where you can delete it if they're no longer useful. This is where you can edit the persistent memories. So we are at our time. You will get a recording for all of this. I will provide a PDF. I'm sorry that I had to run through those last few minutes, but as you can tell, I love this stuff and I wanted to get through as much as possible for you. I really appreciate everybody's time, and I definitely appreciate Stanford for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I hope it was helpful, and I hope I can do some more advanced versions of this in the future. Appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful time, and you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. Take care, everybody.